Okay, so movie lovers and cinephiles around the world, here we go again. Yet another edition of Andy Takes On, and today's episode, Andy takes on Mortal Kombat!
10 minutes isn't even enough time to explain the Mortal Kombat conflict.
Is that a challenge?
Look, listen. I don't know what happens to Hollywood studios when they have an opportunity to make a video game movie, but it never seems to work out well. Okay, because before Mortal Kombat, we had Double Dragon, Street Fighter, Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat, Super Mario Brothers, and Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And the only ones that you remember from those are Tomb Raider and Street Fighter. And the reason why is because they had Hollywood A-listers. Jean-Claude Van Damme forever. This Mortal Kombat did not. So if you don't have a Hollywood A-lister to draw the audiences, then what you can't afford not to have is a cohesive, compelling story that's going to make it a fun ride. This Mortal Kombat did not. So what did it have? I'm glad you asked, and I'm going to tell you all about that because, as you know, I'm here about the movie. We meet the warrior Hanzo Hasashi of the Shia Ryu clan moments before Bihan of the Lin Kuei clan attacks him and his family and leaves them for dead. Unbeknownst to either of them, the last-born child of Hanzo actually survived the attack and was rescued by the elder god Raiden. Whilst the story of how this baby grew up raised by a god to enact revenge on the man who killed his family would have made for a riveting watch, Mortal Kombat is not that story. Instead, we jump 400 years in the future to present day where we meet Cole, a descendant of Hanzo Hasashi, who is a washed up past his prime MMA fighter, who gets rescued by Jax to be one of the champions of Earth in a tournament known as, you guessed it, Mortal Kombat! Fights ensue as Bihan, now known as Sub-Zero, is sent by Shang Tsung, an interdimensional wizard, to attack and kill the champions of Earth before the tournament happens so that their dimension, that is Outworld, can take over our dimension, that is Earthworld, or, here.
Did you make that last part up?
I promise you, I didn't make any of that up.
It just kind of sounds like you made it up.
Yeah, well, I didn't. The story then follows the cast as they come together to form Team Earth and train together before the tournament begins. Amongst the team is Sonya Blade, a lady with a chip on her shoulder from not having been chosen as one of the champions. And you can't blame her because every character she encounters makes a point of telling her that she is not worthy.
Where's your marking?
I don't have one.
You don't even have a marking.
But the training area is for the chosen ones only.
Your death has no worth.
Prisoner Kano, who is the acting highlight of this movie. I was getting into it with one of my friends. We were having an argument about how he feels Sub-Zero was the best actor in the film. I felt that Kano was. Now, I admit Sub-Zero's action scenes, and you'll see them here, were probably top-notch. If it was a game, I was definitely going to pick him over Kano. But in terms of wit, sarcasm, wordplay, and general charisma,
China wins.
Liu Kang and Kang Lao, who train under Lord Raiden, and the cast is rounded off by some random bad guys. The story then builds up to a showdown between Sub-Zero and Scorpion, which I'm sure you could tell from the poster of the movie, so I'm not counting that as a spoiler, and then ends on a cliffhanger that implies that there's going to be sequels. Very risky. And I say that because let's look at the themes and the tones of the movie. The main theme, I suppose, of this movie is that you need to believe in yourself, and we can see it maybe most poignantly in the storyline of Sonya Blade, who, through the power of self-belief and determination, goes on to then earn herself one of the champions tags that allow you to be seen and identified as a champion for your realm in Mortal Kombat. The same basic story structure follows the character arc of Cole, who went from being washed up, we don't get a background as to why that was, but he's washed up, and then to believing himself enough to be able to discover his superpowers and take on Lord Goro, who is a handful. See what I did there? So I guess the overarching theme is if you believe in yourself, then you too could become a gruesome killing machine. Now, when I walk into a movie theater or, the lounge, I generally want to believe in the story that you're telling me. I want to have fun whilst I watch it, and I want to be drawn into the world that you're creating. In this movie, we're introduced to characters like Cole, who's the main character, but who has never appeared in any of the games. And because of the way that he's presented, because of the lack of backstory and character growth or character development, we don't really care about anything that he does. We just know that we're supposed to be rooting for him, and he's related to Scorpion. Fortunately, that is counterbalanced by characters like Kano, who really has the burden of carrying the wit.
Okay, that's far enough, MC Hammer.
And witticisms and the dialogue and the banter of this movie squarely on his shoulders. And he does a very good job. But Jax is another example of the plain Jane thing that I'm talking about, where it seems like instead of writing a character, they just gave character side notes. And in Jax's case, it was, did 6 tours. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I feel like with Sub-Zero, that's really where maybe the opportunity was wasted, because so many interesting things happen to Bihan off screen. From the fact that he survived for 100 years, you don't know whether he's alive or dead or reanimated. The fact of where does he get his ice powers? That would be an interesting thing to develop. All we know about his driving force is that he wants to eliminate Hanzo Hasashi's clan. So, there was a lot that we could have had, that could have seen, that could have made us root for or really hate the guy. And then, of course, we have Scorpion, wielder of the best Hanzo blades since Hitari Hanzo of the Kill Bill fame.
We understand?
Understand. So much of his story also remains unexplored, and it almost feels like the filmmakers really jumped to setting up sequels without having put together a firm foundation first, so that this film really does have the feeling of being a prequel for a much larger universe that I hope they get to create. Then, of course, there's Lord Raiden. There's an old storytelling device called the Deus Ex Machina, and this refers to, is literally translated to God from the Machine, which refers to a storytelling device wherein writers would write themselves into a corner, and in order for the plot to be able to go on, they would then have a God character literally come out of a box and then do something impossible simply so that we can move the story along. And Raiden, in this case, really serves the same function. He's a literal Deus Ex Machina, because all he does is come through and teleport people or himself, and yet never teleport them when they're in danger of losing their lives. And at the end of the movie, he tells certain characters that they need to go and find the next warriors in the Mortal Kombat tournament, instead of just teleporting them to his temple and draining them there. So the inconsistency around the rules of the Raiden character are also some of the things that make it a bit jarring to follow the story. Like, okay, we'll talk about it more when I give you my full take. So, having established all the human characters and the Mortal Kombat godly character who can do whatever the plot requires, from being a godly nanny to being a teleportation device creator to being a maker of the electric fence, what is my actual take? Should you go and see this movie? Look, if you're a fan of the game, go with different expectations than you would if you were just playing the game in story mode, which is actually a better story. Movies based on fighting games, you can't really go in there with any wild expectations that you're going to get much in terms of character development or in terms of character growth. However, you get Mortal Kombat, a story with a lot of potential, but most of which was wasted. And again, I go back to the fact that there are 20 plus years of lore that the writers could have drawn from. Why create a new character instead of establishing the characters that we've already seen and telling us how they got to be who they are, or telling us a story that is future based? But what I'm saying is, write better. In the words of Captain America,
You've got to do better.
that being said, I have to also give them kudos, because they did try to pander to audiences of the game by throwing in little tidbits that if you're a player, you will recognize. We've got
Flawless victory.
Now, flawless victory is a little hopeful. It's flawed at best. And my major gripe, perhaps, is the fact that at the end of the movie, after so many characters have been killed, Shang Tsung then comes and says that despite the fact that these guys are dead, death is simply just another portal. So in essence, everything, every death, every fight that we've seen in the movie is of no consequence, because these guys can just be resurrected. So I guess this is immortal combat. I don't know what is taking place here, but I didn't like that. But the fight scenes themselves were worthy of Mortal Kombat. And if you've played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Look, my advice to the filmmakers is this. If you've got enough lore that you've had 20 years of success with this particular franchise, adopt it to what you're going to do on the big screen. There are fans of that who've already bought into that clearly, and they will support you as you go on that journey. I mean, Marvel, and I hate to bring up Marvel in every review, but they spent 13 years giving us the template for how you make a big budget adaptation. High source fidelity, You just need to stick to the material that you have. And number two, hire top talent. Do you know how many Academy Award winners / nominees are in the MCU? It's basically the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences making Marvel movies at this stage of the game. But by all means, continue to try and reinvent the wheel. And let's just hope that they don't fall off before your franchise really hits the ground. As for me, I'm giving Mortal Kombat 2 stars out of a possible 5. Do subscribe to the channel. Do let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know which movie you want me to review next, and let's keep the conversation going. And those are my takeouts from Andy Takes on Mortal Kombat, and I am taking off. I will see you next time.